Offside! 1-0! Here's Sims. It's a good serve this from Southampton. They could finish the job here. It's Shane Long, and he has done it! Just a minute to play. That's stoppage time. Here's Letizia!
Hello and welcome. This is Saints FC Podcast episode number 70, and I am absolutely delighted to have a new guest on the show, someone we've never spoken to on the Saints FC Podcast, and a person that I think most Saints fans are going to be very interested to find out more about, and we'll probably hear a lot more from this man over the course of the season. I'm welcoming on Carl Anka from The Athletic. Carl, how the devil are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Obviously, all the better for having you on the podcast today, which is a real treat for us, I hope. I'm pretty sure you're going to do a pretty good job through this, but we'll see how we go. So for those of us, or those Saints fans and listeners out there who don't know who you are, they may have heard your voice on the Totally Football Show podcast before. They may have read your work on The Athletic, which we're going to talk a little bit about, but also previously maybe on The Independent, Vice, BuzzFeed, FHM, a few others. Carl, I don't know if you want to throw in some more on that.
I don't want to toot my own horn.
Yeah.
I'll just say before here I was at the Players Tribune, but you did never guess where. Yeah, I've had an interesting career since graduating university.
Yeah, and you actually went to university in Bath, is that right? I was looking at your
I went to
LinkedIn
Bath.
profile. Yeah, that's where I grew up in Bath.
Great.
So I have a lot of love for Bath.
It's a fantastic little city.
Yeah. Can I push you on finding out what your favourite watering hole or nightclub was whilst you were a student there?
I spent so much time in Punanars that when the DJ at Punanars got married, I got invited to the wedding reception.
No way. That's quite impressive.
That's a lot of time going to Punanars.
My best story about Punanars is I once asked a girl outside Punanars for a cigarette for my friend, and that girl are now married together. So, from borrowing a cigarette to marriage 10 years down the line. Anyway, we're not here to exchange stories about our Punanar in Bath experiences. We are here to talk about Southampton Football Club. But also, firstly, I want to talk a little bit about The Athletic, who you're currently working for now. And my first question for you, Carl, is what is The Athletic and why should Southampton fans care?
The Athletic is originally an American company. So they started off in Chicago. Head office now is currently in San Francisco. And the idea there is to create high quality sports journalism, the likes of which have hopefully never been seen before, or to hark back to an era that may have we fondly remember, where every single team had a local reporter who gave us in-depth, informed, and not quite partisan articles. So the Athletic UK, the UK operation, launched formally on August 8th at the end of the UK transfer window, which is quite cheeky, I think. And the idea is to have at least 20 journalists for all 20 Premier League sides. So some Premier League sides have one or two more. And we've got 2 or 3 journalists that cover the 6 clubs in the Championship. We've got Ralph Hogstein covering covering the Bundesliga and whatnot. And the idea is every single club in the Premier League has at least one dedicated journalist, hopefully embedded within the city, to basically be your dedicated author of all things to do with that football club. Not just the first team, but the reserves, the under-23s, under-18s, the women's side, if such a side exists, and to give you the best sort of articles, news, features and perspectives of that football club, past, present and future. So I am the Southampton correspondent. Hello. How are you?
Well,
what would you like to know about your football club?
So, I'm quite an avid listener of the Totally Football Show podcast with James Richardson that you've been on before, and we've had a couple of other of your colleagues from that show on this podcast before, including Michael Hawks and Rafa Honigstein, who are both writing for The Athletic. And I think what really piqued my interest is that The Athletic kind of hoovered up a lot of the really kind of, I don't know whether they're big names or they're just kind of like hipster names, but there are a lot of the writers that I was enjoying either listening to on podcasts or reading their work in various different places around. So it seems The Athletic have gone for a very targeted approach in who they've picked up. And I think they've probably got some of the best writers in the country when it comes to football and sports. So, and I gave the little trial a go, and I'm now paid up for the season. So I've been very impressed. As a Southampton fan, you don't get an awful lot of coverage in the national kind of like mainstream media. So probably the best we get is in the Daily Telegraph, where Jeremy Wilson used to work for the Daily Echo in Southampton. So that's probably the best we get outside of that. But you've been doing some really, really in-depth articles on Southampton and releasing about 3 a week at the moment on all sorts of things, from the tactics to the women's team to player interviews and that sort of thing. Is this exactly what we're going to be expecting throughout the season, or are you looking for some other kind of little bits and pieces that we can look forward to seeing as well?
Well, thank you very much for those kind, flattering words. First of all, I'm glad you're enjoying it. I'm glad you're a subscriber, and you got a brand new promotion for the international break going on now. So if anyone wants to sign up, you can sign up using the link. Dun, 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 dun. Drum roll as I get the link, otherwise I'll be in a lot of trouble. Where is it? It is theathletic.com/join our club, and then you can get 40% off your subscription. Yes, you are correct. I write around about 2 to 3 articles a week. That is intentional. The idea is if I don't have to write something every single day, I have a little bit more time to get additional voices, a bit more research to really get into the nitty gritty of Opta stats or to watch match footage over and over again. So yeah, the intention very much is to every single Monday, there should be, from Monday morning, there should be we don't do match reports, so what I call a debrief of the weekend's action. So unlike quite a lot of outlets, I'm not writing my report as the football game goes on. I'm not filing that the moment it's full time. If I'm going to go watch a Saturday 3 p.m. game, I'm going to watch one very particular thing. And if my theory for what's going on that week comes to pass, lo and behold, hooray, I get to write that fairly quickly. If it's not, then I'll write something on the fly and try my best to get additional voices and come up with a unique perspective. So it's not just, Southampton are very good, but they conceded again. They need to get a better defender, which I think if you read that 38 times, you'd wonder why you're getting a subscription. So yeah. we try and mix it up. The intention is to watch all Southampton teams. So I will be, not only did I go to Southampton women's team last week, I also went off to watch Southampton Old Boys, the ex-Saints, play ex-South Stars on Friday. So I watched Matt Letizia up front with James Beattie, with Franny Benali in defence, and Wayne Shaw of Sutton United and infamous Pie in goal. So that was a Southampton game I went to watch last week as well. The idea is to create the best sort of coverage you can get. One thing I've been quite surprised about since covering Southampton is how little time they get on Match of the Day.
Oh yeah, tell us about it, man.
I was shocked. So obviously, the first game of the season was a 12-hour round trip to get to Burnley away. So I spent 6 hours on this train going to Burnley, watching the game, think out the thesis, 6 hours back, more or less got home in time for Match of the Day, watched the entire thing, and I think there was maybe 15 seconds discussing Southampton's performance in that 3-0 defeat. So it was all about Burnley's very, very good. Look how good Ashley Barnes is. And then it was like, yeah, Southampton defended really badly. They have to improve. Okay, next game. And I was like, what? where's the rest of the coverage? And the idea is for the Athletics to break past that. Is to get to a point where it's not just the top six and then whoever scores that week who gets the coverage. It's explanations as to why things are going. If things are going wrong, it's an explanation as to why they're going wrong. If things are going well, it's an explanation as to why they're going well, and also if the things that are going well are going to be sustainable. If there seems to be a notable pattern with transfers or with injuries and whatnot, the idea is to look into that. So if you're a football club and for all of a sudden all of your players keep having ankle injuries, let's look at why you're having ankle injuries. Is it because something's going wrong with your pitch? Is it because maybe he does double training on the Friday just before a game? The idea is the Athletic always tries to answer whatever salient question is on a fan base's mind, and they always try and back up every hyperbolic statement we make.
So is that a bit of a challenge for you as a kind of, I mean, I don't know what the course you did at Bar Spa Uni, but were you kind of like trained as a football journalist, or were you just trained as a journalist? And how does this differ from perhaps some of the work you've done previously as a football journalist?
It's really interesting because this is my first ever season as a beat reporter, as a football journalist. So I have no formal journalism training, as it were. I went off to do creative writing and cultural studies at Bar Spa University. I originally wanted to be a screenwriter and make documentaries, and make short films. And then I sort of pinballed my way through multiple internships and learned how to be a journalist on the job. So I don't have the traditional, I don't have a NCJ, I don't have a shorthand training or whatnot. I've always said I'm just very, very curious, which helps. It helps with when you've got a very unique writing job such as this, because I don't have the year's worth of go in and write a match report and then do player rating. It's go watch the game for 90 minutes, Carl, and then call me up and see what you found. And then I went, oh, look, it's really weird that they seem to do this on set pieces. It's like, all right, can you write about that for 800 words? Absolutely. Do it. Make it entertaining. And off I go. Some people find it entertaining. Some people are very curious as to why I use very weird pop culture references. But I think it's fine. Please let me know if you're not enjoying it.
There may be the occasional pop culture reference that might go over my head, but I've certainly noticed your eye for detail and your eye for perhaps the unusual. So you were talking about Southampton's approach to throw-ins and defending throw-ins and trying to force the opposition to give away throw-ins. And I found myself sat there in St Mary's in the chapel end watching the game against Manchester United and just like making a mental note of every single throw-in that happened and what was going on, which, to be honest, you know, apart from when we had Rory Delap playing for us, I've not really been particularly interested in throw-ins. And then I picked up another thing as well. So Kevin Danso seems to have a bit of a trebuchet of a throw. He's got a bit of a Rory Delap about him. So I'm wondering if perhaps this is where that's come from. And that's a question that Tom and I discussed on the last episode of the podcast, but perhaps you might have a little bit more insight on that.
He does have a little cannon on him, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So a really interesting thing with Southampton, and something I'm quite enjoying about watching them this season, is they have a very, very clear, pronounced way of playing. And at the moment, they're only somewhat good at doing it, which makes it quite fun because, okay, cool. So they're doing like stages 1 to 4 of House of Wolves. Oh, they've broken down at stage 3. Okay, they're trying to do this set piece routine. Oh, they've broken down there. And even when things are going badly or when Southampton are playing badly, it's because of a very clear reason, and you understand absolutely what they're trying to do, which it sounds quite simple, but there are plenty of Premier League football clubs that don't play with a clear plan like that. There are plenty of Premier League football clubs that have aspirations of ending up in the Champions League spaces that don't have a clear, pronounced plan to what they want to do on the ball and off the ball to the way Southampton do, which I find very, very, very interesting.
Yeah, and I think we might get onto that in maybe a couple of questions' time. But I'm going to roll back a little bit because we've gone a little bit kind of left field here from the questions. But I wonder how you ended up covering Southampton, because you're a Manchester United fan, and were you the athletic correspondent for Manchester United last season as well?
Yes, so the Athletic started Athletic Soccer last season, which was sort of a test phase where they covered the top 6 clubs in England and as well as Barcelona, Real Madrid, Paris Saint-Germain, and I want to say Juventus. So that was sort of a test from the Atletico. Can we cover soccer in the same way we cover NFL, basketball, and other college sports? And I remember when I got offered the chance, I went, wait, but I'm like this Manchester United fan everyone hates. I'm the Manchester United fan who lives in London. I went, it's fine. Just be really, really entertaining and be really, really, really focus on being unique in your writing and your ideas. Don't do match reports or do what everyone else is doing. I went, okay, fine. So I did that for a season. It got quite hard before Christmas because I will say on this podcast what I say all the time. I absolutely despise Mr. Mourinho. So things got better when Solskjaer came in charge. And yeah, now I'm covering Southampton, which it's fun because obviously I'm not having to write 15 to 2,000 words about why my own personal football team is terrible and why someone needs to be fired. So I can have the quite sort of, I won't say detached, but it's quite fun looking from the outside in and not being so having my opinions coloured by certain emotions. Yeah. So there are some players that I'm sorry, I'm going to find it very, very hard for me to say anything bad about Paul Pogba because I desperately love that man and I want to hug him all the time. Whereas I haven't quite reached that stage with any Southampton players yet. So I will, I don't want to say I want to tear down your gods, but I can actually, I think I have a fairly objective view of what's going on at Southampton, which I think helps when you're covering a club like this. You don't want to be too wedded to any local boy done good stories or heroes, because if they're not whipping in crosses and that's the reason why you're not scoring, you'd like the journalist to be able to pinpoint that. Yeah, surely.
Yeah, definitely. So how did you end up covering Southampton? Was that an intentional thing to move away from the club that you support and come to Southampton, or did a bigger name get Man United and you were relegated down the division?
It's a funny story. So I was obviously writing for Athletic Soccer all season, and there were press rumours that the Athletic UK was about to launch. They were going to hire X amount of people. And I thought, oh, okay, that's interesting. It's weird they haven't told me that. So I was thinking that my freelance contract had run out, and I was looking for other freelance roles to supplement that income. I was going off to Spain that June on holiday. And so I handed in my last article and there you are. I'm off to Spain. I'm going to watch the Champions League final in Barcelona. Dumbass. And I said, I'll see you when I see you. Came back from holiday. I got a phone number from an unknown number. And as a man who's in their 20s, I don't pick up phone numbers from numbers. So I switched that to voicemail. Got another one, switched it to voicemail. Got another one, switched it to voicemail. Was kindly recommended I answer the phone by someone. And then I was made an offer. Someone made me an offer I couldn't refuse. They asked my openness to becoming a full-time employee, and I said it'd be quite nice to have a pension. And then they asked my openness to relocate, and I said it'd obviously matter on where I was relocating to. And they said, how would you feel about Southampton? Talked to my mum about it, weighed it all up, said Hassel was a good manager. There's some interesting things out there. I think I could probably find the next Virgil van Dijk if something was to occur, and that'd be quite a nice little string to my bow. Being like, oh, I was the first one to write about the next big thing in the Premier League. So I said yes. So I accepted a job offer at the start of July. I moved to Southampton on July 20th. I lived incognito in Southampton for a couple of days because I couldn't reveal who I was or what my job was for journalism reasons. Sneaky. And then August 8th, I was able to unveil myself into the world like, hello, how are you? I've been learning about your football club for several days. Would you like to say hello?
Brilliant. And what have you kind of learned about Southampton so far? I suppose as a city rather than the football team, I'd be intrigued.
So I've spent quite a lot of time talking to the Southampton historians and the group at Hagiology Publishing. So as I'm talking to you right now, I've got 6 books on Southampton history going all the way back to basically the club's inception. And there are 4 historians of the football club, and if you talk to all of them, they've all lived in Southampton on and off in the city for many, many years. And one of them mentioned to me, he goes, Southampton is a very northern port city that has accidentally ended up on the south coast. and now the city makes sense to me. I'm like, oh, right, yeah, I've accidentally landed in like southern Liverpool.
Yeah.
Like, okay. Yeah, good. It's really this city full of hardworking, politically switched on people who they're quite friendly. They really look after themselves. So I work from home right now, and I only really have to leave the house for shopping and or to watch Southampton Football Club. So I'm not like wealthy with friends at the moment. But for the most part, every time I've been out in a library or in a bar and trying to type on my phone, there has been someone, "You're right, do you want to come talk to us? You seem lonely." I'm like, "Oh God, thank you." Which isn't something you get in London. So I'm very appreciative of the people of Southampton. They've been very good to me.
Yeah. I've got to admit, as someone who's recently left London and I've ended up in the middle of the countryside, the first few weeks of people saying hello and being friendly is mildly terrifying, and then suddenly you get used to it. And then now I go to London and already my mindset has changed. I'm like, God, everyone is so grumpy. But yeah. Well, I encourage our listeners, if you spot Carl out, do say hello, do be warm and welcoming to him. Make sure he enjoys our city, because we probably want you reporting on Southampton for the time being. I've asked you what you've kind of learned about the city of Southampton so far. What have you learned about the football club that, maybe something that you didn't expect? I'm sure you must have had quite a lot of preconceptions. You're already saying that you're hoping that you might find, the next superstar of football coming through the academy or through the kind of transfers that Southampton did. But is there anything that you're expecting that, or something that you didn't expect that you've discovered about the club?
I'll answer this with a little bit of how I came to learn about Southampton. So I moved to the city on July 20th. I didn't have internet until I think August 1st. So I did what many millennial people do when they need to learn about something. I loaded up FIFA. So I loaded up a season of FIFA. I put on the hardest difficulty. I put on world class, so I couldn't use my FIFA skills to supplement any potential stat lowering features. So I played a season and a half in career mode at Southampton, and sort of I went through that. Okay, so this is how this team plays. This is how this team wants to work. They could probably play quite well in a 4-3-3. And they're quite vulnerable to counter-attacks, and I did this and messed around on Football Manager at the same time. And I went to the first preseason game they had at home at St Mary's. And I think the first thing that struck me was just how on level the fan base were. I've yet to encounter a fan base that has been so, yeah, we'd be happy with 12th. We'd be happy with 12th in the cup run. And that's that. We're like, yeah. You're just, I don't want to say realistic because that seems like a disservice, but I've never seen such a fan base that is just so, there is so accepting of the hierarchy of the Premier League and so respectful of their own history and their place within the Premier League. So I've yet to meet a Southampton fan that goes, we should be back up in the Europa League places and doing this and doing this and doing this. They're like, no, look, we've had 2 very bad seasons. Mark Hughes, and now we've got Ralph, and we're on a rebuild project, and it'd be quite nice to have a cup run and top place. Okay, do you want to? Like, no, we're fine. It's easy. A couple wins, some good attacking football, and that's done. Which there is the joke that basically every single football club, every single fan base believes their football club needs to play attacking football with youngsters. But Southampton is obviously a club that does it and does it a lot. And they're very much like, yeah, let's do that for a bit. Like, okay, well, this is nice. After covering Manchester United last season, it's quite nice to have a football club that is like, no, we don't need to be challenging for a title or within Europa League spaces. We're just going to spend this year, reassess stuff, do what we need to do, and then enjoy ourselves, which is quite nice.
Oh, good. That's quite reassuring to hear, because sometimes you can get lost in Twitter with perhaps the people that hold the most extreme views on Southampton Football Club. I mean, you can do this on any subject going, And you do have to occasionally try and remove yourself from disappearing too far into the comments about a tweet about Brexit or something, where you suddenly go, okay, right, I'm in the depths of the internet now, I need to come back out for air. I definitely think the last 2 seasons have probably been the reason for that, because if you look back to us sacking Claude Puel after we came 8th and had a decent cup run, and I think most Southampton fans at the time did want us to sack Puel, and now you can see that actually, well, a season when we finish 8th and get to a cup final would be really, really great and really well appreciated. But also I think the other thing that people are feeling much more positive now is Ralph's style of football. And, you touched on it there, that Saints fans do like to see young players and they like to see attacking. We're very lucky to have managers like Maurizio Pellegrino and Ronald Koeman, who, Pellegrino has a very, very distinct style. Koeman was very pragmatic and used the players that we had in the best way that he could, and was very successful. So then to go from that to Claude Puel, which was very kind of like turgid, slow-paced football, and then Pellegrino was much the same, and then Mark Hughes, who, there's not really a particular style, I don't think, to Mark Hughes.
Mark Hughes was terrible.
Yeah.
He was terrible. I have no idea why you hired that man or why you gave him an extended contract. But
he did his job. Like, we got him for to save us, and he was going to get £1 million bonus for doing that, which he did. But then why we gave him a 3-year contract afterwards, who knows? Anyway, that's all water under the bridge so far. I want to get on to the kind of more interesting stuff now, because one of the things that I've picked up from your writing is that I suppose that level of intrigue that you were talking about earlier, but there's a level of detail that, as a Southampton fan, I've not been used to reading about Southampton. And probably my favourite article so far was your article on the 4-2-2-2 formation and how you'd kind of looked at it. And there's a lot of people who probably, we actually have quite a lot of listeners from all around the world. There's lots of expats who listen to this. There's lots of American listeners who don't get to see Southampton very often, and some that probably haven't seen us play in person with this formation. So can you describe how it works? Because you're able to put it much more eloquently than I am, having read your article.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed that article. It seems to be the first, this guy's serious. I think I'm going to look back on that and think that's my turning point, the fan base. So, glad people enjoy that one. I was up till quite late getting that one over the line. I
think that's your stunning finish from the edge of the area that ingratiates you with the fans. The new signing.
Right. So the 4-2-2-2, which we've henceforth termed Hassel-Hustle football, or the Hassel-Hustle, or the Hoof-and-Hustle, as the athletic commenters have mentioned, and I'm just going to circle through all those nicknames this season. It is Hassel-Hustl's most preferred formation and his most preferred shape. So when he came through in Ingolstadt, he did a little bit of 4-3-3, but his majority of the time he spent at Red Bull Leipzig was using the 4-2-2-2, and he is slowly, like, everything you have to consider with Southampton is to get this Southampton team to play in that shape, because that's absolutely what he wants to do. He did it. He played, I think, something like 66 times out of 83 games in Germany with Leipzig, and he's beginning to do it now, especially because he's got Kevin Danso in the side, which was a big sort of, we're going to look at Danso joining Southampton as a big moment, I think, going forward. So it's a flat back four with overlapping fullbacks, but what's really important is the front six of the 2-2-2-2 bit. So you've got a double pivot of two number sixes in central midfield. Now they're meant to be very, very hardworking, constantly running, high stamina, loads of tackling, two essentially the midfielders with good passing ranges. So I think for the majority of this season, it's going to be Romeo and either Højbjerg or Ward-Prowse. I haven't quite, from what I've seen from both of them in that position, I'm not sure who's the better person as the other GM, but I think Romeo is going to be a starter in that for a long time because he's the best defensive midfielder you've got in your books. Then you've got the wide men, so the second rank of two. These players are really interesting because the left-sided one, so nominally Nathan Redmond, is tucked in, and the right-sided one plays a little bit deeper and a little bit wider compared to the left-sided one, especially when James Ward-Prowse is playing. So this might be Moussa Djenepo, this might be Boufal, but whoever plays on the right will play a little bit wider and a little bit deeper in the pitch. One, to give you balance for all the attacks that go down your left-hand side, especially when you've got Bertrand and you've got Redmond on the left-hand side. And also, you play wider on the right-hand side because if James Ward-Prowse is playing in central midfield, it gives Ward-Prowse extra space to burst into and play almost as like a fake number 10. So that's that as well. And then in front of them, you've got your two strikers. That will be one of Danny Ings, and I'm going to assume Shea Adams, because Shea Adams he's looking at XG. If you're an XG stat person, he's about to score a bucket of goals. Right. So that's the shape.
Yeah.
What's really interesting about this team is that Hassel wants Southampton to attack the goal within 10 seconds of getting the ball. So he is really, really focused on the attacking transition. He mentions it quite a lot in his press conferences. So two things you want to look at when a Hassel press conference is look for when he mentions attacking transition, and look if he describes a football player as open-minded. He will do that a lot this season. So the idea is he wants a high pressing side that wins the ball high up the pitch, and then the moment they get the ball, they have to spring forward and get to the goal and have a shot on goal within 10 seconds. So first things first, you press a lot from goal kicks. So nearly every single time opposition side tries to do a short goal kick, one of your strikers, or maybe it's Ward-Prowse, will shoot up and try and nick the ball off them. That's how Ings scored against Liverpool, and that's how I think it happened again against Manchester United. Someone is always up there trying to do that. They also do what I call channel passing. You press very particular passing channels from the back four whenever an opposition team is trying to play out the defence. So most notably, the left centre-back. Every time a left centre-back has the ball, a Southampton player is trying to stand in between them and the left-back in order to cut out the ball. The idea is the centre-back, seeing the left-back isn't a passing option, will pass it down the middle of the pitch. And the idea is when he passes it down the middle of the pitch, one of the double pivots, so Romeo, Ward-Prowse or Højbjerg or someone, can jump the midfielder who has the ball, nick it very quickly, play it forward to the person ahead of them, so that's Ings or Adams, and then Ings and Adams can have a shot on goal. That is a very, very basic version of Hassel's press. Another really interesting thing is your wide men don't play, your right-sided wide man plays a little bit wider, but they play quite pinched in. So the idea is anytime the opposition football team tries to play wide, the front six drift left and right, and then try and press as a conglomerate to try and press the entire ball out the pitch. So this is when we said Southampton get a lot of throw-ins this season. It's because you're basically trying to box out every single attack that comes out from wide positions. I think against Brighton, you had something like 20 throw-ins on the left side in particular. It was a really, really, really good defensive thing. It's almost like a rugby technique. So I played quite a bit of rugby, and I always got told the best defender in the world is the touchline.
Yeah.
Because you play out. And I think Hassel does that as well.
Interesting, because this he really devised at Leipzig when Leipzig had to play 2 games a week for the Champions League. So I imagine he's doing this because he realizes that his Southampton side isn't the most athletic or can't put in the running miles of a Champions League level side. So that's basic view. Oh no, wait, another thing you have to notice. There's a lot of long balls done. So quite often we'll play a long ball forward to your front two, and it will look like an aimless punt, but the idea isn't to necessarily get it to Ings or Adams, but it's necessary to basically give it to the opposition centre-back, so the opposition centre-back can head the ball into the middle of the pitch, and from there Romeo and Ward-Prowse can spring forward and set a counter-attack. It's purposely giving away possession so you can win it higher up the pitch. And those are the 3 tenets of the 4-2-2-2. So flat back 4, tight 6, high presses, especially on the goal kick, attack the ball within 10 seconds. The middle pivot are essential for everything that happens. And very often you will just launch balls forward to the opposition defender to spring a counter-attack. Any questions?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely noticed that the launching the ball forward and almost intentionally losing it. And I was actually thinking that was the most rugby-ish thing that we were doing. It felt like, I think when I was at school, I used to play the fullback position, where if I ended up with the ball, I had a decent kick on me, so I'd kick it as far as I could up the pitch, and then obviously everyone tries to run up with you. And certainly from the view from behind the goal, when Southampton were defending right in front of me, you could see them doing that time and time and time again. And I was wondering if we were trying to force the throw-ins, but now you've said that you want the centre-backs to head it back out and then have someone like Romeo or Højbjerg rob it off someone like Pogba in the middle. That makes total sense as well. So, yeah, interesting to see that working. And, the double pivot, it looks like that those two positions, are they going to be the most important players for Southampton this season? Is it going to be
Absolutely.
Romeo and whoever? Because I guess kind of like the last couple of seasons, Romeo hasn't looked that great, but the game against Manchester United, he looked absolutely immense from where I was sitting. He was like the Romeo of 3 seasons ago, I think, when he won his Southampton Player of the Season award. So he's going to be totally key to this whole thing working, because we're going to be looking for Romeo to win the ball over and over and over and over again in the middle of midfield, and then quickly get it to Che Adams or Danny Ings to fire off a shot. And I suppose the other thing which makes a lot of sense, if you watch Che Adams' goals from last season, so many of them he's shooting before the keeper's readied himself. He loves an early shot, doesn't he?
He does indeed. I've been interviewing a former Southampton striker who coached Che Adams, so you should be able to put 2 and 2 together from there.
Yeah.
And he was recently telling me about visualization and set pieces and shooting drills he put Che through during their time together. And I think what was really interesting is that Che is normally right-footed, but when he shoots with his left, he tends to go for power rather than placement. And the idea is to slowly get Che into a place where he's a little bit more comfortable with shooting, placing the ball with his left foot. And you can see it now. Like, Che Adams is playing good football. He's linking up well. He's leading the press. He is popping up in the positions you absolutely want your striker to pop up at. But he has had a recent tendency to snatch at a couple of shots. And I think when it does click, when he gets that first goal, he's going to probably get 5 in 3 or 3 in 5. And I think certain fans will be like, oh, what are we worried about?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel particularly worried about Che Adams. He obviously kind of swiped at his opportunity against Manchester United and sent it miles over from about 5 yards out, which was a shame. But he certainly looks like he's getting into the right sorts of positions. And I think I've seen enough from him last season that I'm confident that he's going to come good. I guess the other player that I want to ask you about is James Ward-Prowse, because Ralph's effect on him last season was pretty transformative, but that was in the 3-5-2 or the 5-3-2 formation, where perhaps we had an extra central midfielder to use, and James Ward-Prowse was taking up that role, and he was tough tackling, he was aggressive, which is something that we'd not seen from him before, and he also added in the goals and scored a few goals as well. I was quite confused about his positioning in the game against Manchester United. Is that because he's more used to playing the double pivot role and he was out of that role against Man United, or what was up with James Ward-Prowse?
He was playing on the right-hand side, which I don't think is his best position. And I think he does that because he is a willing runner and very much open to Ralph's ideas and wants to play whenever. The problem with Ward-Prowse playing on the right-hand side is because, like I said, the player who plays on the right-hand side has to play deeper and wider to give space for James Ward-Prowse to burst into. So Ward-Prowse was sort of stood there in his positioning going, all right, I'm stood here playing a little bit disconnected from the game to give extra space from the other for the man in the double pivot to burst into. And Højbjerg was very much, no, I'm going to stay here and deal with Paul Pogba because Pogba's midfield is rubbish. So if I just double team him, we're fine. So Ward-Prowse performed ably at his job at the right. The problem was he was playing it perhaps it wasn't the best interpretation of a player playing on the right-hand side of the 4-2-2-2 because there was basically no runs coming in from behind from Højbjerg for good reasons. Like it was very smart for Højbjerg to say, if I just sit here and Romeo and I double team Pogba, United have nothing, because lo and behold, United had nothing when that happened. I am very intrigued by James Ward-Prowse. I think he's a box-to-box midfielder. I think he's a number 8. He is very athletic centre midfield player. He looks as if he could run 120 minutes every single game. He's a very willing runner. His delivery from set pieces is what I've been told by many Southampton fans about. And I'm going to look into that a bit more because I want to fact check that. So you can look out for that article coming forward. I do worry about his passing ability in full flow. There was a very good Southampton fan who described him as James Ward-Prowse is what happens if you took David Beckham's talent and heart and work ethic and put him into 2019. Yeah, I can see that. He's a good player.
Yeah.
I do worry if he is good enough to be as ball dominant as what he wants to be. And I say ball dominant not as ball dominant is a very basketball term in terms of you like how many times you have to give this guy the ball in order to run your offense. And I think Ward-Prowse probably he's right at the cusp of it's worth it giving him a ball that many times to start attacks. What he's very good at, and I think what he's going to be really important for throughout the season is his stamina and his tackling. He's really adopted Hassel's tackling techniques, and he's really adopted tactical fouling.
Yeah,
which is something you're going to see a lot more of. Players in wide positions, left back, left wing, right back, right wing, and the double pivots. They're going to get a lot of yellow cards this season because when you play a high press and when you give away the ball like this, and you give away the ball of long balls, you do leave yourself very, very open to counterattacks, especially in the wide areas. So I think Danzo aside, Southampton centre-backs aren't particularly speedy. So there is a high risk that if you play a ball over the top of Southampton, you can get in behind. So what
as demonstrated brilliantly by Burnley.
Exactly. So what Hassel, I think, it feels as if this has been instructed from the top. But what Southampton players are doing quite often now is the moment their attack breaks down and a player looks like they can start a counter-attack for the opposition, a Southampton player will foul them. And at the moment, they're getting yellow cards for it. The idea is that they get so good at it, they don't pick up yellow cards.
Yeah.
Or the idea is you spread the yellow card around.
Rather than collecting 2 of them in the same game, like Danso did.
So Kevin Danso was bad at that. Musa Janepo is a real risk for that. So Janepo has 2 yellow cards in 50 minutes of football for Southampton. And I think he got 7 yellow cards to standard liège last season.
I think it's more than that. I looked it up. I think it was 11.
It was 11. Sorry, maybe I wrote that.
Maybe that was across all the competitions, perhaps.
Yeah. He got a lot of yellow cards last season, and one of them was a double yellow. Yeah. And this is something, he got an orange card against Brighton. He made a tackle to stop a counter-attack, and I went, well, that's the red in my nose, and got away with it. So that's something I have to be wary of. I'm not wholly sure if James Ward-Prowse should play in a starting lineup for Southampton yet.
Yeah,
which is odd to say.
It is weird, but I wonder if that formation doesn't really lend itself to having a number 8, perhaps, unless you're less worried about the opposition. Then maybe that might be where you take Højbjerg or Romeo out and put James Ward-Prowse if you want someone a bit more.
It absolutely
creative.
does. So the double pivot, even though both not be a 6, making one of them an 8 that bursts forward and joins the front 3 makes a lot of sense. The problem is, and I mean this in the nicest way, and James Ward-Prowse maybe isn't quick enough.
Okay.
And not stamina or not, but physical quickness to get ball and progress it up the pitch with sheer dribbling power. When you consider that this job at Red Bull Leipzig, one of the people in the double pivots was Naby Keita, who, for all intents and purposes, is one of the better players in Europe for it. You can see sort of how hard this job is.
Yeah, and I think Stuart Armstrong's probably our other number 8 in the squad as well. And I'm finding it hard to see where he would fit into Ralph's plans for the season, other than just perhaps a bit of a bit part player and off the bench sort of player.
Armstrong very much seems to be a favourite on substitutes, but he just seems to be very much a steady Eddie of keep possession, get the ball, pass the ball, either wide or up top, which is fine if you want to close out stuff. And I've never felt worried by the sight of Armstrong coming on the pitch, not in the same way that I have about other substitutes for other football clubs coming on the pitch. He will give you a solid 6 out of 10 performance coming off the bench, which is what you want. Yeah, I feel.
If we move on now to the defence, because we've talked about the 2-2-2, but the defence, I'm going to go going for the old trope here. This is probably the thing that Saints fans have been worried about most. And there was a lot of excitement when we brought Danso in on the, in before the transfer deadline passed, or well, just about, kind of. But yeah, anyway, we've got him over the line. It's a weird thing with our defence, because people tell you we need new central defenders. Everyone's worried about our central defenders, but then if you ask them about the particular personalities, everyone also likes Bednarek. Everyone, well, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people like Vestergaard. Certainly after the Manchester United performance. The Southampton fans adore Yoshida, although probably only want him as a backup centre back rather than a starting centre back. And Danso looks exciting as well. But then he's had this unusual situation of being played on the left with Ryan Bertrand out, and is Bertrand injured or not? We're not 100% sure. But is Danso going to end up in the middle of the centre back, and then who's going to be the one who's going to lose their place out of Bednarek and Vestergaard?
Danso's going to be a centre back. Absolutely, he will finish this season with more appearances as centre back than at left back. If you gave me a shiny penny to put a bet on that, I would put a bet on that. Yeah. So in the most recent press conference after the United game, Hassel said he was really proud of Danso, and he slightly regretted not taking him off earlier when he was on a yellow card. Yeah. And then admitted left back wasn't his strongest position, and and said he views him as a centre back. So I believe the strongest back four, if everyone's fit and if everyone is open to the idea of the 4-2-2-2, will be Bertrand at left back, Danso left centre back, Bednarek right centre back, and then Valerie at right back. I think that's the strongest one. Vestergaard, I've been really perplexed by him up until the Manchester United game. For a 6'6" man, he's not the best in the air, which leads me to believe he might not have worked out his back muscles up until very, very recently, because he hasn't got the leap I expect from a person of that size. And his timing is just a little bit off. And he's not the most mobile centre-back. He is the one that is the most vulnerable to the ball over the top on the counter-attack. But he was very good at Manchester United, so maybe he has turned a corner. Yoshida, I think, is probably a good older head to come off the bench to close out games, which he did against Manchester United. So when you went down to 10 men, Yoshida came on and slotted in at left back, and at no point did I think Southampton would concede after that, because they're like, yeah, we'll just deal with the air and bombardment all day rather than United trying to play anything simple. But I think, Bertrand, Danso, Bednarek, and Valerie is probably your best back four.
So do you think we need to be worried about Bertrand and his relationship with Ralph? Because there are some questions about whether he had a real injury or whether it was tactical, and Ralph kind of hinted that maybe it was tactical playing Danso on the left. But is that just a bit of, I don't know, maybe kind of fronting up an injury problem?
As far as I know, so here's everything I know for sure. Ralph Hassel said Bertrand was carrying a ankle knock after the Liverpool game, and that's why he missed the game against Brighton and against Fulham in the League Cup. He has since trained with the first team, so I know he's trained at least twice. He trained on the Friday before the Manchester United game, and then I saw Bertrand at St Mary's on the Saturday for the United game, where he was watching the game with his mother.
Yeah.
That's what I know.
Okay.
What I feel is that compared to the injury information I was given compared to other players, it was less. So it was very much Nathan Redmond's out for 2 to 3 weeks. he has to wear a boot for 10 days. It's a very, very big miss. Musa Janepo is carrying a muscle knock from training, so he has to miss a little bit. Blah, blah, blah. Ryan Bertrand trained.
Yeah. There's a pregnant pause there, isn't there?
Yes, there is a pregnant pause. So that's why I know. It's been 2 weeks since we've had a little break for the international break. I'm sure there has been plenty of time for discussions to be had between player and club. I don't want to speculate too much on whether or not he's in exile or simply just recovering and decided to be rested for those 2 games. With Danzo now suspended, there is extra impetus on options at left back. Højbjerg played at left back in the League Cup game against Fulham, which was interesting. I don't think we'll see that again unless something very pronounced has happened. I've been having quite a few questions about Vokins. Have I said that right? Jake Vokins?
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. Vokins in the under 23s, who I think should be arriving in as a substitute very, very soon, if not starting at left back, or possibly moving young Valerie, who picked a bit of a knock against Brighton. I wouldn't be surprised to see if Valerie moves over to left back and Cedric plays at right back.
Right.
So there are quite a few options there. I don't want to believe any of those options will be used for the Sheffield United game. I think Bertrand will be in the starting lineup on Saturday.
Okay. Well, there we go on that one. And one of the things that you joked about in one of your previous articles, that Southampton, I think it's probably the one where you're introducing yourself to us, is that Southampton's a city that you pass through. You go to university there, you graduate from it, you come in on a cruise, you go out. It's a pausing place rather than a place that you perhaps might spend or see spending the rest of your life at. And do you think this is Ralph's plan? Is Southampton part of a bigger plan? Is Ralph using us as a stepping stone like so many other players and managers have done before?
I don't think so. I think Ralph is... I know there was a very pronounced courting period between Southampton Football Club and Ralph, and that Southampton wanted Ralph in the summer before they extended Mark Hughes' contract. And then sort of when the Hughes project didn't work out, they went back to Househall. It's my belief that Househall was one of the best paid, relatively one of the better paid managers in the Premier League. I think he's one of the... It feels odd to describe Southampton as a team in the bottom half of the Premier League, but I believe he's one of the highest paid managers in the bottom half of the Premier League. He has a great degree of autonomy at this football club. So Southampton's governance board is Nelly Gow, Martin Semmons, the CEO, Ross Wilson, the director of football, Ralph Hasenhuttl, and I want to say one other gentleman, the managing director, who is, I think it's a Justin.
You know what? My interest in the board is wanes. Yeah.
Southampton FC's managing director is it's not a Justin, it's a Toby Steele. So they are the governance board. So
yeah.
It's quite unusual for a manager / head coach to be on a governance board of a club such as this in the Premier League now, because everyone's trying to move to this director of football model where the head coach moves within 2 or 3 years and you have a consistent sort of managerial thing. But from my understanding is Hasenhuttl has a degree of autonomy that you won't see at many clubs in the Premier League. He has a 10-part list or criteria for every single player who is scouted and brought into the club as well. So Southampton right now are very reluctant to pay more than £15 million for a player. And then if they do want to bring in a player, they have to tick off these 10 things that Ralph Hasenhuttl wants, which I believe... I don't know what the exact thing is, but I think they have to be on the age of 24. They've got to be
open-minded, surely.
They've got to be open-minded. They've got to be capable of playing within at least 3 formations. Two-footedness is preferred, and if you go through quite a few of the match match day programs, there's quite a few buzzwords that constantly pop up, which I'm like slowly trying to formulate. Are these the 10 Commandments?
Okay.
But the idea that a manager has that much input is more unusual than you'd think at a football club nowadays.
It's more old school, isn't it? It's more kind of a throwback to a bygone era.
Hassel very much is a manager compared to the first team coaches you get at other Premier League football clubs. He cares not only about the first team, but he has helped with the restructuring of the academy. So the under 23 team and the under 18 team and the under 16s are all being revamped and rejigged. So when these young players eventually are brought through and playing the first team, their transition is as seamless as possible. I don't think there's a nominal reserve team anymore. I think it's just sort of a development on the 23s, which, when you've got 20-year-old Jan Valery playing at right back, makes a lot of sense. And I think if you gave me a shiny penny to put money on it, I think Hassel will be the manager at Southampton until the next World Cup, the next Men's World Cup in 2022, providing the board keep their promises and providing there is money for him to keep putting forth his ideals and the way he wants the football team to play. I can very much see him there for at least 3 more seasons.
And where do you think he hopes to get to? Do you think he does hope to qualify for Europa League, and will he maybe see that as far as he can take Southampton?
That's a really good question, and one I'm going to answer by looking at your finances instead. St Mary's is a 32,000-seater stadium.
Yeah.
I've got a local newspaper in front of me. The matchday revenue is 19 million. Broadcasting revenue is 120 million. The accounts are very good at Southampton, and they very much have the ground and the training academy and whatnot to be of a Europa League level. The Staplewood training ground is one of the more impressive training grounds I've visited. I'd not put it far off a Champions League quality training ground. It's definitely a training ground as good as one of any football club competing in Europe. So there's no reason to believe Southampton's cap is 8th and a cup run. There is plenty of growth to get into that Premier League middle class, and I think Southampton want to get in there very much. There was a fan forum that I watched before I came here, and I believe Adam Blackmore from BBC Radio Soul asked the assembled people if they'd be happy if Southampton finished in the band between 9th and 14th. And I think most Southampton fans raised their hand on, yeah, that's what I want. And I think that's the objective for this season. I don't think that's the objective for the season afterwards. I think Southampton do want to be in this push for the Premier League's middle class, along with West Ham, Watford, Wolves, and other clubs.
Yeah.
And to do that, it takes a lot of ambition. You can't go, if we end up 9th, that's good. You more or less have to go, we're going to aim for 7th every single season and see what happens next.
Yeah.
And Ralph is an ambitious person. I think the amount of backing he's got from the board and the way he wants to do it. So it's not just let's get to 7th by spending a lot of money, but let's do it with young players, playing in a very pronounced way, playing in a way that's sustainable, not only financially, but sustainable in a way that means there's a constant route of players coming through. So, you, for example, look at right back. Yeah, you got the 20-year-old Jan Valery. You also got the 19-year-old Kane Ramsey right behind him. That's what Ralph wants over and over again. And I think that takes 2 to 3 years at the very least. At the very least, it takes 2 to 3 years. You wouldn't, if you play Football Manager or you play FIFA for any length of time, you don't buy a bunch of 19-year-olds only to leave after 2 seasons. It makes no sense.
No, you got to stick with it and build and develop. Well, that's really exciting, I think, to hear. And if that's the vibe that you're getting as an outsider, that's also good because, people like me, our judgment is always clouded by the fact that we love the club too much to be objective. I'm going to ask you kind of one last question before I'm going to ask if you've got any other business, Carl. But who's going to be the star for Southampton this season?
A big question. I think it's going to be a toss-up between a new signing. Kevin Danso has already
slotted into that back four and made Southampton look infinitely more secure side. So if you're a fan of all-conquering defenders, especially young ones, I think Danso is going to be a favourite. I've been on the Saints web forum. I've seen some people experiment with some player chants there, which has tickled me quite a bit. And I think when Moussa Djenepo gets up and running, I think one of Moussa Djenepo and Shea Adams will end up with double-figure Premier League goals this season, it sounds not a ridiculous task, but when you realise no one's done it for Southampton since Sadio Mane, you realise, oh wait, it's about time they had a goal scorer they could sing about. So I think Djenepo will be right up there. He should probably get 12 this season.
Okay. So just picking up on your Danso and the song. So like, I mean, for me, I'd love to see the Northern trying to attempt Elton John's Tiny Dancer in some form of Kevin Danso form. What are you backing?
That is my one.
That's your one as well. Okay.
I want to hold me close to Tiny Dancer. Although he's not tiny, is he?
No.
Which I suppose that's part of the fun. 6'3".
Yeah, exactly. There's a guy on my pub quiz team who's about 6'6", and he's called Tiny as well. So, there we go. Carl, is there anything else you want to bring up before we say our kind of goodbyes to the listeners?
Just you can find me on Twitter at Anchorman616. Anchor spelled ANKA, and then man, and then a number 616. My DMs are open, so if you have any questions, comments, or theories, or you want to be meaner than the comments in the Athletic section normally allow, you can reach me there. I am currently writing up an interview with said former Southampton striker, now coach. So that should be out hopefully tomorrow. I'm going to write like a wind when this podcast is finished.
Excellent.
And I am looking out for stories about the South Coast Derby. So fans have asked me, am I ready for the South Coast Derby? I'm absolutely not ready for the South Coast Derby. Please give me photographs, anecdotes, theories, times you've been, times you've not been able to go. Please give me those stories, what the South Coast Derby means to you. My DMs are open. Let me know that sort of stuff.
Carl,
as well.
I'm going to give you a funny anecdote about the South Coast Derby, just because you've said that, and we haven't talked about the South Coast Derby in this episode yet, which is probably actually a minor offence as a Saints FC podcast. So we can put it right here. But the best man at my wedding, like really good friend of mine, who was staying with me in Southampton when we had I think it was the one on our way back ups in the Championship, the 1-1 at St Mary's. He's not really into his football at all, but he was in Southampton with me, so I was like, look, we're going to get you a ticket, which we did. But we were walking across the park, heading towards the stadium, as the Portsmouth fans were about, the other side of the park, and they're getting their police escort, at which point about 15 of them broke free from the police escort and started running across the park straight in our direction. We weren't in colours or anything. They were just running away from the police, but they were running towards us, then with the police cavalry charging them down. So we had about 15 Portsmouth fans and 5 police cavalry charging towards us. And I'm there with my friend who doesn't normally go to football at all. He was slightly terrified, but took it in rather good humour. So there's lots and lots of anecdotes I'm sure you're going to find about that. But it's always good fun. It's always ferocious. And the mildest mannered Southampton fans transform into these kind of hate-fueled Southampton supporting animals when it comes to the South Coast Derby. It's quite alarming to see.
I cannot wait.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wear green so as to not antagonize anyone.
Yeah.
I'm gonna wear green. I'm gonna wear green on as many match days as possible. So the idea is, if you see a very confused looking football journalist walking around wearing green at St Mary's, it's probably me. So say hello.
Okay, great. So that's out there to Saints FC podcast listeners. Look up Carl on Twitter. You can see his profile and look out for that man wearing green. Say hello. Be friendly to him. He's only just moved to our city, so we want to make sure that you love it here. Carl, it's been absolutely great speaking to you. I wonder if you'd care to say ta-ta to our listeners now.
It's been a pleasure. Ta-ta, and I hope you have a good season.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you, listeners. We'll catch up with you next time.